Hello, welcome to The Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob, for another faction reaction. That's right, we're talking Seraphon today, one of the most successful or scary armies from Age of Sigmar 2, and I'm joined by a wonderful man. I call him the Renaissance Man. When describing him last night to someone, I described him as a man who's able to achieve everything before 9 o'clock in the morning. James Hobbs is in the house. Hi, gorgeous, how are you?
Hello, good afternoon. I am awesome and very happy to be here.
I'm really excited to have you here. Now, Seraphon are going to be a really interesting one to talk about, specifically because they're such a well played faction, and they also, last edition, were such a strong faction. So I'm really interested to find out what your thoughts on this particular one are going to be. You've also played at the Super Series at least twice. I've seen you play on the tabletop. I've got a lot of love and respect for you as a gamer. So I'm very much excited to hear your thoughts because I know you will have deep dived this a lot. So
Too much.
too much, arguably, too much. When messaging me yesterday, you were like spreadsheets. I was like, hold on, we're just gonna go at a level. So, are you excited about doing today? You okay? Comfy and
Yeah,
everything?
I'm fantastic. I'm comfortable. I've got the fan. I'm all good. And I got talked out of doing slides. So no presentation.
Okay, no presentation. That seems fair. All right. Well, don't forget if you guys have tuned in. This is the first time you tuned in to this Wargame. It's filmed in front of a live studio audience, which are the Twitch chat. Thank you, Chill Hammer, Stabgrot, Plus, Ferromite, Powell. Hello, everyone. It's all great to see you. And obviously, you can listen to this as a podcast or watch it back on YouTube as well. Okay, James, Seraphon in 2.0. Talk to me. How did they play? What was happening?
I was trying to think how far back to go because I think the Seraphon that everyone knows in 2.0 was when the new Battle Tome dropped. And that was like first half of 2020. And it was just like, it was game changing because it was sort of an army that felt like it hadn't had much love. You were reliant on like a couple of new rules from a GHB into suddenly this just like powerhouse.
Yeah.
There was you got like your Starborn, you've got your Coalesced, and then you've got the two further kind of sub factions. So just like loads of versatility. And because it's an army that's been kicking around forever, you've got a gazillion units. So just like awesome and really exciting as an army to explore. Um, I think for the Seraphon players, it was kind of just this like awesome utopia. For the Seraphon opponents, it was kind of like, why is your army so broken? I'm tired of taking my toys off at times. Um, but it was an interesting space to be in 2.0.
Yes, I think leading up to the Seraphon Battle Tome, they were. I mean, I've been a Seraphon player when they were Lizard Men, and then straight into Seraphon at launch of Age of Sigmar. So huge fan, huge Kroge stan, Razor Dons. Like I played all sorts. Like even when Seraphon at one point in kind of over the arc of Age of Sigmar a time, there was a time when they were like sub 40% win rate, and it was a rough time. So like we even kind of like, look, don't do Shadow Strike. There was loads of conversation. So like huge love for these dinos forever coming from me, but they were oppressively strong last edition, right? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, it was really nasty. And you kind of, I remember a highlight before the rules dropped of winning a game with 0 kill points. And it was like, yes, I managed to move my skinks out and not kill anything, but I won the game on objectives. And that was the highlight into suddenly, like, you could delete an army in a turn or two. But I think in 2.0 it was really cool. So I really leaned into the Starborn side. It's just got loads of tools. You could teleport and great mobility and just some incredible synergies. I think the stuff that kind of got famous for being painful was your Crognado. You build with the Guard, the Balewind, the Astrolith, and it's just like you get mortal wounds and you get mortal wounds and you do, and then let's do it again. And because that was great, let's just do it a third time. So you can see why it wasn't loved by all. And then Skinks as well. Skinks just became these monsters. You'd have blocks of 40, supported with a priest, star priest. You give mortals, you buff the hit, you make them run, shoot, charge, and it's just it's terrifying. So I think in the shift to between like 2 and 3, it's been really interesting seeing how, you I guess like the limitation on issuing and receiving command points or how prayers work or how spells work have limited some of those things. And I think one of the real pain points is also the reinforcement sides. So um, I had a look at some of the points, and I'll try not to kind of put everyone to sleep with it, but I just went through kind of like what was it in sort of GHB 20 and what was it in GHB 21. And I guess I've looked at it in a bit of a bubble because I think all of the books going between 2 and 3 have seen points changes, and there's been a kind of a points uplift. And you kind of gone, the battles are a little bit smaller, the board's got a bit smaller, but kind of like what does that mean for Seraphon? So someone, I can't remember who it was, I'll have to find out who it is to credit them, did this like beautiful spreadsheet of everything, and they just did, here's what it was, here's what it is, numerically, and then percentage change. And if you took every single Seraphon unit and you kind of went, what was it? What is it now? It's about a 10% uplift, which actually doesn't sound too bad, but I think that there's a couple of red herrings in there and a couple of traps. So I
Okay.
thought, okay, well, that's not my favorite way to look at it. Why don't I look at the stuff that I used to run and just kind of see how it translates? So I looked at things like what's your skink blob, your priest, your star priest, and a block of skinks. And I think it's sort of interesting to see how that's translated. So if you took 40 skinks, a priest, and a star priest, it was 430 points because skinks were a beautiful 60 points and they've moved to 75.
Yeah.
But if we look at what you can do now, you can't take 40, and for 30, it actually costs you 5 points more. So you're looking at like 435 points for a block of 30 with a priest and a star priest, when it used to be 430 for a block of 40. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but at the risk of going into the numbers, it's like that's a 25% damage reduction for the same number of points. So it's not the 10% change that it looks like. It's quite a big nerf, but coming from a place where it was oppressively broken. So it's kind of like you don't feel too bad about it.
No, like if I was to like throw my like chimes into the wind and try and guess at, I felt like DOK and Seraphon were like 25% undercosted last edition. So like the 10% or even the 25% brings them into what I thought was parallel with where the middle of last edition was, which means with everything else going up, I don't feel like puts them in a super bad place. I'd also just like to quickly re-clarify for people at home. There are lots of ways that Seraphon were played, obviously, in 2.0 after the release of the Battle Tome. But Fangs of Sotek generally was considered like the more competitive side, although we saw at the Super Series, so that's an event that we held here in the TSN Arena, which is a bunch of very competitive players playing in a very specific format, but it was one of the few bits of coverage I was able to do on competitive wargaming, and some of the only competitive wargaming that really happened over 2.0, other than stuff that happened in Australia. I know America was there as well, but like whatever. So we were able to like kind of see some different builds. So we saw some Coalesced and we saw some Starborn. Thanks, Katie, for subscribing. Big love to you. Thanks everyone for tuning in, by the way. So yeah, but lots of different play styles. But Skinks and Kroge featured heavily until his War Scroll update. And then you also obviously you didn't generally tend to see like a lot of Saurus blocks. So if you're one of the Facebook people, you're like, oh, I think the Saurus was a thing. No, it wasn't. But Basiladons were. And also
Yeah,
Saurus
Thunder Lizard had its place.
Yeah, definitely, and also and Saurus Knights, shockingly in Firelance Starhost was a thing. So that was real. So I think those are the main playstyles, right? In AOS 2, would you
Yeah,
say
I
that
think
that's fair?
two we saw like Fangs a lot of. We saw a little bit of Dracothian's Tail. There was some like quite nasty alpha stuff you could do with that.
Oh
I think
yes,
Thunder Lizard was kind of it had a space in competitive, but it was kind of I think treated as a bit more fun. And then you kind of had the people that I have huge respect for, which was like the Kotal's Claw, which are kind of the underdogs, the people that wanted to play, real dinosaurs.
yeah, 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 and they weren't messing around. They're like, we're doing this, and we're not stopping. Okay. So before we get into like the winners and losers in in Seraphon, let's talk about your thoughts on Age of Sigmar 3 wholesale, any takeaways or anything that you might have in that situation. Where are you at? Like, what are your thoughts personally for you?
So I love it. Like I think it's just like it's changed the game. It feels faster paced. Feels like there's, fewer units, less re-rolling, but the game is way more dynamic. And I'm sure it's been like you guys have talked about it to death, but just the movement reactions, redeploy, the ability to like unleash hell on charges, all those little extras I think are great for the game itself. And I think the grand strategies, the battle tactics, and a lot of the new maps for scoring that, like, 1 point for one for two or more, one for more than your opponent, alongside balancing the battle tactic, has made some of the games really tight and really exciting. So I think it's in a really good place. It's perhaps a little bit less forgiving than it used to be, but way more exciting to play.
Okay. Yeah. I think there's lots being said about the first turn, second turn sort of situation at the moment. Did you ever play into the first turn at any point, or like what was your kind of general thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a funny one. I think the armies I've been playing, I tried to find something that's fairly balanced, and it's difficult because the boards are so small. I think there were times where, especially in two, you're like, I'd rather not go first. I've got tools to manage it, but basically I'm playing for a double a lot of time.
Hmm.
Whereas actually in this, on those like that close proximity, you're thinking, well, if I get first turn, I might be able to take enough off that I'll be all right, and I'm comfortable risking the double. So I still think it's really important, and that we'll see lists built around getting to make that decision. But it's more ambiguous now.
Okay. All right, that's interesting. Thanks to Crazy Horse in the chat for donating gift subscriptions in there. Just before we move on to the winners and losers, do you have a singular takeaway, like a big winner, like not in Seraphon, like a single, like this is my favorite thing about 3 right now? Ooh, interesting one.
I got a favorite unit. It's gonna come up in the
Okay,
winners.
all right. Well then,
I love the Skink Priest.
okay.
It's just like
Well, we'll talk about that then.
it's the man.
Let's move it. Let's move into the winners and losers then, straight off the bat. Talk to me. So, like, where were we at? And also, thanks to Crazy Horse for donating the gift subscriptions in the chat. Massive love.
All right, winners and losers. So I think, uh, looking at the points changes, there's a couple winners. I think part of it is out of the FAQ. So the two bits that came out of that really made a difference are, one of the winners is the Realm Shaper engine.
Right.
That's gone from being something which was a coin toss as to whether you got it or whether you buffed your opponent, into you get it every time. And so just being able to have that, stick like a priest or wizard in there and go, mortal wounds for you and you and you, like guaranteed on a smaller board, just like such a buff to the army.
Mhm.
Probably one of the strongest faction terrains I think we've got in the game right now as a result of the FAQ.
So, what was the problem with it before, and how's it changed?
So I think the issue with the Realm Shaper before was like it was 0 points, it's still 0 points. But so it's basically a piece of faction terrain. You can garrison in it. It's kind of really handy. You could use it to maybe block line of sight. But in AOS 2, it would happen before picking sides.
Right.
And so you might just go, there you go, chuck your heroes in there, and now you get all the benefits of garrison there, like minus the hit, the extra save. You're going, not really what I wanted. But if you did get it, then it was like, okay, well, I can garrison in it, I can get those bonuses. And the rules in Seraphon are, if you've got Seraphon Wizard or Priest, then you pick a piece of scenery, and on a 4-up, for every unit that's within 3, it does D3 mortal wounds. And if it's within 18, you get +2 to that roll. If it's more than 36, it's -2 to that roll. So now you've got this guaranteed piece of scenery. You're at least doing 4-up, often 2-up on everything within 3 of a piece of scenery. So when you're playing Lumineth, you're now not a popular army to fight against.
Yeah, of course. I mean, great. Like, Lumineth needs something to keep them in line, right? That's really important. All right. So, do you think the Realm Shaper just generally a big win? And now, like, so everyone's gonna, because previously people were like on the fence. Do I even?
Yeah. Do I even buy one?
Yeah. Do I even buy one? But you think 100% now, definitely in.
Yeah, and you need something to do with it. So then all the stuff that's happened with priests, I think they're incredible. It's 80 points for a priest now. It's like it's nothing for a bunch of mortal wounds, and you because the it's quite a big piece. You can issue your command points from there. It's got all of its prayers. So the priest already is really strong, right? You got your command ability that you use in the hero phase to give +1 to hit. So actually, it's great for a lot of attack. But actually, something that lasts until your next hero phase means that you could have multiple units in a round that are getting bonuses to hit. It's got an ability, not a prayer, on a 3-up, run, shoot, charge, +1 save. So your Pteridons and Fangs that are moving 19 could maybe get another 6. So just like incredible for 80 points. So yeah, I think you definitely take a Realm Shaper and you're putting a Priest in it probably because it costs nothing.
Yeah, of course. All right, so Realm Shaper, big winner. That makes sense. I'm happy about that. Like, because no one wants useless faction terrain. Poor Sinesh. So like, I mean, it does a thing, I guess. So okay, what's the next big winner? Talk to me.
Uh, Chameleon Skinks. So
Okay.
when the points landed, I was actually having a quick look. So Chameleon Skinks went from 90 points to 115 points. It's like a big change. It's like 28% uplift. It doesn't feel great. But in the FAQ, because the old Chameleon Skink rules, I mean, the old ones where you just place them anywhere and it was incredible, but then they kind of went, that's a silly old rule, 9 away like everybody else. But if you were in cover, you used to get +2 to save.
Mm-hmm.
But then all the saves have changed. And so in the FAQ that came out, it was like, okay, they've got a 6 save, in cover you'll go to 5, but now each model within 1 of terrain gets a 4 ward.
Yeah.
So you've got 5 models that you can keep in reserve, drop anywhere. They're doing mortal wounds on 6s to hit with range of 16, and they just become these horrible, like immovable, like pains in the butt.
Yeah.
So I think for 115 points, for something you can keep off the board, then do mortal wounds, and then gets a 4-up award to like everything, it's just incredible. I think that's going to win games.
Yes. Now, we saw them previously taken. So, Seraphon list from 2.0, we saw 2 packs of 5, or sometimes a pack of 15 is what we saw. So, either people were like, I'm just going to drop down and do a little something, something. A bit like we saw Shadow Stonkers kind of used in that same kind of role. Tree Revenants, if we'd ever seen Sylvaneth ever. Like that sort of like role in an army. But now they are, for some reason, a very, very survivable in addition.
Yeah.
Which is weird. And
I like it for the fluff, though, right? You're like, you can imagine them disappearing, and you're like, is there something there? I don't know. And you're like, did I hit him? It's like,
so you're just throwing
no.
hand grenades into a bush, hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair. That's fair. And so would you like, because their points did go up though, right?
Yeah. They went up a lot. So 90 to 115, 25-point increase. But as a result of the FAQ, I think worth every point.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I would say Camo Skinks are like right up there with like, especially his utility piece, and especially with like some of the battle tactics. So like being able to drop 2, so Savage Spearhead 2 in your opponent's territory, so you could do that at, like.
With a teleport in Starborn, you guarantee it. Or it's like Conqueror, take a point off, because quite often people won't have stuff in the middle, so you can just drop them on the edge of an objective and steal it. Beautiful utility.
Okay, all right, I'll take that. Camo Skinks, big stonks. Okay, next up, give me what's next.
Let's do a loser. So I think the biggest trap, the Bastillodon with the Arc.
The Arc of Sotek.
You see that? The Arc of Sotek. And like it's a great tragedy. I hope the War Scroll changes, but it was 220 points because they used to just be like 1 entry for Bastillodons and you'd have 2 loadouts. So you got the Arc, which you don't see for sort of obvious reasons, and then you've got the engine, which is like your laser, and that's your dinosaur shooting laser. Awesome, really sexy. But the arc went from 220 to 185, so you're thinking like, okay, 35-point decrease or 16% reduction. It's a monster. There's bonuses to monsters, but I think it's a trap. It just like it does some mortal wounds in combat. It's got the 1-up save. But the difference in AOS 3 is that used to mean it was unrendable. It doesn't anymore.
No.
And so a 1-up save is still like a great thing to have, and you can buff it, and you can still get great things. But that, alongside Mystic Shield now becoming a buff to save instead of reroll 1s, you're not going, okay, it's a 2-up that I can try again at. You're going, oh, maybe that's a 3-up? And actually, it doesn't shoot, and I need to roll 6s, otherwise it's not really going to do much. I think, but still done with the Arc, it's still not in a place where I want it.
Yeah, I don't think it does enough. Like, truthfully, and it's also a weird war scroll as well. I think one of the interesting things about what you've started off with, and I like the breakdown, is like unit roles and what it does in the army. And what it does is it doesn't achieve anything. Is like 0-1. Like it's there, which is nice. Like, and you could do stuff with it, but like the Chameleon Skinks definitely, as soon as you put them in a list, they fulfill a role. You're like, I'm going to achieve X here.
Yeah, I'm going to guarantee X many points just because they're in my list. Like, it's just...
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think for competitive play, you're looking for certainty. And I think if you're fishing for 6s, you've kind of, like, you've just taken certainty and gone, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. All right. It's fair. I think that's fair. Like it's a loser. Also, it just give like although harder to kill, like you like hard to kill, not hard to kill. In fact, actually easier to kill than it was
Yeah.
previously. Still going to give you. It's a monster as well, right? So it's still going to give up a VP.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can like, you could do like monstrous takeover. It might win you one, but actually you're looking for your monsters to be able to delete
Yeah.
things. Like that's where you're going to score the extra. So you're going, I'm taking it. I might not get the extra, and I'm going to concede a VP. So even at like the biggest reduction we see in the change, it's a big loser.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Uh, Take me. Where do you want to go? Winner or loser next? Like a dice roll. I'm excited.
I think let's kind of go something that I'm undecided on.
Okay.
And that's kind of just Thunder Lizard. So I think Thunder Lizard because this is all about monsters now, and like you go, all right, AOS 3, it's all about big fighty monsters scoring extra points, and Seraphon can do that, and it used to do that with Thunder Lizard. And you take your Thunderquake, and Thunderquake was really cool, right? So you have Savage or Swift, so you got choice. Do I want to be able to run, shoot, charge, or do I want extra melee attacks?
Yeah.
And you could have some like terrifying synergies with a Stegodon Chief, or the Skink Chief on Stegodon, and you start stacking your asterism for bonus to attack, and then your battalion for bonus to attack, and kind of all these other things which just make it monstrous. And sort of so we've lost Thunderquake, which is 150 points, so you don't pay for that anymore. And I guess looking at Thunder Lizard as a whole, it's in a really good place. I think it's really interesting, especially from the points change. So the biggest increase is your Stegodon Skink Chief, 22% uplift, right? So 250 to 305. But now you've got a monster and a hero, bonus scoring, all that. I think there's a little bit of a danger because you go, okay, great, it's a monster hero, I can heal it. But do you know what the bravery is? Like,
No, because in Coalesce their bravery is lower, right?
yeah, so Starborn, it's just 10 across the board. It's like, it's great. You need to not roll an 11 or 12.
But
I'm pretty sure Skink Chief on Stegodon's a 5.
shut up.
Yeah,
Shut.
Engine of the Gods is a 6. It's like it feels really good until you go and check your war scroll, and then you're like, oh, maybe it's not that good.
Yeah, it's a weird one that they based it on like bravery because actually once you start having that conversation, like you jump over to you jump over to things like the demons, and obviously they just succeed so much more because of this situation, and then everyone else is like, everyone else has a tough time. Squigs are like, please, can I heal? And they're like, no, you aren't brave. It's like, I'm riding a mental pair of squigs. Like, I mean, they are bravery 10, actually. That's a bad example. um, anyway,
But yeah, so
yeah, go on.
so yeah, so I think like the Stegodon Chief, it's kind of like it's still awesome. It's a big uplift, but if we compare it to what you used to run with, you'd also run it with two Bastillodons, and then you'd have like your I don't know tax for a Razordon or a Salamander or whatever to get the battalion bonus. But I don't think you need it anymore. So even the Bastildons only went up 15 points. It's 7% uplift. So if we imagine that like every book has gone up 10%, they're probably cheaper than they were, and you're not paying the battalion tax. So if you wanted a bit of mobility, you might take like the Alpha Beast battalion for the pregame move, or maybe if you want to like get that bonus to hit, you'll take Linebreaker. So I actually think what's happened with Thunder Lizard is it's in a place where it's comparable or even a little bit cheaper than it used to be. So it suddenly becomes really interesting. So you get a little bit hit because it doesn't have the healing. And then the limitations in 3 and issuing and receiving command abilities per phase mean that you can't just have a bunch of Bastillodon shooting twice, but you can still make one of them do it and you can still buff them. So it's kind of, I'm not one on it, but I'm not lost on it. I just think it's an interesting space it's in now.
Okay, all right. Well, so and one of the reasons like is being pointed out in the chat, thank you very much, is that the reduction of how you can do command ability. So you can only shoot twice, like in Thunder Lizard. Well, you used to be able to shoot twice. So you have two Bastillodons normally is how they were run, and then you can make both of them shoot twice. You can't do that anymore, right? Because you can't issue the same command ability twice. That seems like the biggest nerf to the way it worked. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you're running 2, you're shooting 3 times instead of 4 times.
Yeah.
And you're going, well, okay, that's a pretty material nerf.
Yeah. And then, like, I guess maybe it would maybe it was just like the most efficient version of that was to effectively take two. Like, that was the most efficient version. Maybe there's a version where you only take one and then you try to do other stuff inside it. But,
Yeah.
like, that was the command ability you got for being in that sub faction. So you feel like you were really pigeonholed into achieving that anyway, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's other fun stuff you could do in Thunder Lizard, right? Like you could roll your engine twice, and it's just like, cool, I'm playing with a slot machine. This could be amazing, or I might just like be at the bar pretty soon.
Yeah, okay. So Tavi's in the chat, and Tavi says, I rate Thunder Lizard a lot in this edition, and Bastillon is a great to score tactics with, as it's a monster that can kill its targets at range. Priest of Bastillon, you get 18 shots, 3s and 3s. But, like,
Yeah.
you said you were unsure on it anyway, right?
Uh, I mean, look, it's gonna score points. I think I'm unsure because like I'm a great big sucker for Fangs, and this would mean that I have to like stop playing Starborn. So I come with a bias.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair. I think everyone does as well. I can completely see Tavi's point in the chat. I do think that the other things that you lack by going into Coalesced maybe aren't really made up for it. So I can completely understand that. And like Crazy Horse saying in the chat, in combat the Bastillodon does nothing as well, so it can't really like remove
Yeah,
itself.
if you get locked up, like it's gonna take a little bit to kill it, but it neuters some of the potential. It doesn't have great ways to get out of it, right? There's no teleport, you can't retreat and shoot stuff like that. But it's an awesome shooting unit. You can buff it up. It can achieve a lot, and it's a monster that kills stuff. So battle tactics are nice.
Yeah, of course, of course. But like, yeah, you're sacrificing the whole army to do battle tactics on one monster, maybe. I mean, there's Carnos and other stuff, but anyway. Sorry, what's next after you?
Um, I just sort of going through, and there's some interesting stuff. I thought I might just like touch on Cordal's Claw, but I guess the great big thing that I missed is Bound Endless Spells.
Okay.
And so I know everyone is like really lamenting the loss of Bound Endless Spells for Seraphon.
Yes.
The ability to just go, yeah, like, oh, that's my purple sun and you can't do anything about it. Those are my geminids, you can't do anything about it. And so I just like, that was a great call. Just take it out. They now have a thing called Bonded.
Okay.
So I think an interesting mechanic, which I think helps a lot of other armies. It makes you want to take some of the endless spells. You get to control it. One wizard controls it as long as it's within 30 range. I guess is kind of a way of nodding to the magical power of Seraphon. They get bonded, and so that means you kind of don't have to worry about that 30. Just if it's on the board, you still get to control it, even if it's moved out. But I think it's a bit of a nothing, right? Because the boards are pretty small, so if it's outside of that, it's going to be pretty niche scenarios.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
So a nice change.
A nice change. Okay. All right. What's next?
What's next? Everybody's favorite unit, the Salamander.
Okay.
So I think Salamanders kind of dodged the bullet. In fact, they didn't dodge a bullet. They come out as kind of like really well off in this. So whether it's an omission or deliberate, they've lost their role. So they used to come down as artillery, right? And so you could run them in up to 3, so you could still get a lot of them. But now there's no role. So if you're like, I fancy Dracothian's Tail with 12 Salamanders that I'll just kind of drop down, you can do that. And that's like oppressive, especially since the points only went up 10. Okay, so they started too cheap, and then they went up to 110. But going 110 to 120 between 2 and 3 still feels like a bargain.
Huge.
And I also really like, with Rally, it's kind of changed the minigame. So you don't feel it as much in Starborn because of the bravery, but it's a real pain point in Coalesced because they're bravery 5. And so you've got your 1 Salamander and you got your 3 handlers. So if you kill 1 handler or like 2 handlers, you're like, oh, I'm going to lose this just powerhouse.
Yeah.
So if you're running a couple of them, it becomes really interesting in how you take them away because you want them to get maximum output. But I think there's a new way to play it, which is when you're taking them away, sometimes you're going to want to take away the Salamander first and then handlers, because that way you can rally it back. So you go, instead of taking all the handlers and having 2 Salamanders, I'll take 1 Salamander and 3 or 4 handlers, and then when I rally it, I'll get more attempts to bring that 1 Salamander back. So it's kind of an interesting mechanic of that own mini game of what order do you take them away.
Yeah, of course. Do you still rate Salamander? I mean, I do a lot, but do you rate Salamanders in D3, like a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm running them at the minute, so I'm trying to play around with fangs, do my skink blob, couple salamanders, some chameleons, some pterodons, which we can talk to in a sec. But I think they bring a huge amount. So just the way in which you can stack save means that like Rend has taken on this new nuance, and Rend 1 is just like it's nothing. So you need something which is at least Rend 2, which they bring. They got 12-inch range. You can teleport them. You can put out a lot. But the king of the show really for me is mortals. And you roll a 6, you're doing D3 mortals, and you're getting a lot of dice to roll. And they've got good stats, right? So it's like 4 shots, threes, -2 D3. So I still think they're really powerful, and just the ability to bypass saves with mortals, dirt.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so useful, right? Like, because you're right. Like the save stacking and then the Ren conversation is really in parallel with just how many mortal wounds can you produce. Which I mean, Seraphon just haven't struggled with ultimately, thanks to like a bunch of abilities. So I think you're right, and I think like is being talked about in the chat, 2 packs of 2 salamanders is still terrifying. And if anything,
Yeah,
like
that's before melee, right?
yeah, yeah, just from range before they even get into a fight. And I completely understand what 3 can do. Like when they 3 used to drop down, they used to delete a thing. But I think now you're almost a bit like the Hearthguard Berserker talk, where there was a big brick of 30, and then they were like, you can only have 20 now. And then people were like, actually, do you know what? 220s is probably more utility. Like, it's
Yeah.
probably a little bit more effective, actually, for me. Like, I was just putting too many points in. So actually, and they lost the artillery keyword, right?
Yeah, so you can have a bunch.
Yeah, so you can just have loads of them. In fact, actually, an event here recently, I wrote someone a list who was playing an event, and I just wrote them. I think I put 10 salamanders in their list, and I was like, I asked him at the end of the day, I was like, "How's your day?" He's like,
Bad man.
"I've had the best day." You just point them at things, and they just die, and I was like, "Yes." So I still think that they're criminally undercosted, if I'm 100%
Yeah.
honest. So I could see them being huge winners, and they didn't go up in points. So yeah, fantastic.
And it's a nice way to get people to kind of like use up their all-out defense, because you know it's got 2 rend, and you're like, can I make you use that so you don't have it somewhere else for somewhere that maybe doesn't have that rend?
Yeah.
So I think that's a nice one. And you know, there's some great utility that just exists, especially on the Starborn side with the way teleporting works. So you know, you could move, try and bait out that redeploy. So I had a game against Lumineth the other night, and I moved some salamanders up, and it got them to just within 9, and they're only 12-inch range. And he's like, "I'm gonna redeploy and move out." I was like, "Okay, are you sure?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay, I'll now teleport them 9 away on the other side," which is kind of which didn't land that well, but I enjoyed it, and I don't think they'll do it again.
Okay, salamanders. Okay, it's nice
Yep.
to know that they're still one of the ugliest models, but one of the best war scrolls in the game. Sure.
I've been trying to make them a little bit prettier. I did a couple of conversions I'm working on. I got some of the war cry guys, because there's like that cool chameleon one on the branch, and there's the other guy with his cheeks like fully blown out. And I just took the one of the flamers from the Engine of the Gods, and so you've got this like guy with this huge flamethrower, and it's a bit of fun, as opposed to like the horrible little derpy ones. I mean, you got the really old ones with the fins, but
The older ones with the
they
fins
have
at
nice
least cooler.
stats.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so what else? What do you think? Winner, loser? Where are we at next? Take me on the journey.
Sundance winner. I think I'll go into one that I think is a winner, but it falls in the similar category to the chameleons, and that's the Pterydon Riders. I think it's probably because they were undercosted, right? So Pterodons for 3 were 90 points, and like they're a 6-up save, they're 3 wounds each, but they have incredible mobility, right? They're like a 16-inch move, which is amazing. And in Fangs in the first turn, you get +3, and maybe you like use your priest ability. If you can roll a 3 up, they can then like run, shoot, charge. So you're like 19 plus D6. It just lets you pick an objective. And then the gem with them is their once per game ability to deadly cargo. And basically, you roll a 4 up for each one, and then if you do it, you get to do your D3 mortal wounds. And that's on any move. So you can do that on a move, you could do it on a charge, you could do it on a pile-in. So I just think incredible utility. And it's 9 wounds. You can lock something up. I found it really useful for just getting those key kills on heroes, right? You maybe do a little bit of chip damage with Comet's Call off of your Slann or Kroge, and then like if it's not quite finished, you can use your Pterodons, do your once per game, and not only kill that hero, but lock something else up for a turn. So 90 points up to 115, so like another 28% uplift. Sort of same world as Chameleons, but I think what they bring, even though it's a points nerf, they're winners.
They're also great small trading units, right? So like what I mean by that is like you sometimes tend to see big bricks of something, and then like because that's all you have to put something expensive to just go hold an objective, whereas you could just throw 3 very fast onto an objective and you'd be like, right, you take them off and I'm going to counter punch. I've talked about trading units all the time, but they seem like a very useful trading unit ultimately, that have other roles in your army as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think whenever, not often, not whenever, often when I play them, I use them as one of those ones where, because I've built where I'm not sure if I'm going first or second, I'll put them towards the front, and it's like, if you're going to take it, you're going to delete that, but if you don't, it's going to cause you pain. And it's one of those ones where it's kind of like it forces your opponent to have that kind of that puzzle, that problem to solve. And I think for that, they bring great utility.
Yeah, yeah, really, really good utility. And do you think that there's something to be said for having a pack of 6? Because they can't ever be battle line, right? Can they? No.
No, no, they can't be battle line. So I think what's nice about them is they're one of the only units that has a champion that's not battle line. So we've not really talked about the command abilities, but every battle line, okay, except for the behemoths, have an alpha. So they can give command abilities to themselves. The ones that aren't battle line and have an alpha are the Pterodons and the Ripperdactyls. So the Pterodons have an alpha. So I think it's interesting because if you were to run 6 and you lost a couple, maybe they could rally themselves. So that's kind of cool. I think where they really suffer is the new coherency rules.
Okay.
It's a big base. Once you go to 6, they've got to be within 1 or 2. And then I just think that means you're not really getting them into combat. You might not be able to guarantee those 4 ups. So I think the idea is great. I think it's one of those ones where you do it on paper and you're like, yeah, got this sussed. And then you're on the board and you're like, oh, it's not really worked out how I hoped.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. I think some of those like elite infantry 3s and Pterodons kind of fit in that kind of in a way, have
Yeah.
been affected across the whole game. It's kind of like they released a bunch of them and then they were like, by the way, no, and you're like, oh, what? This is weird. What? All right. Is there something to be said about the other version of that, the Rippers, or do you think that the Pterodons just have so much more utility?
I want to like the Rippers. Like, they've got a special place in my heart. I think there's some hidden away behind me in the shelf that doesn't get play, because you used to spam them, right? Like you used to summon them from the engine, you used to shadow strike them, and it was like they're going to go in. You've got your fun little blot toads that you dropped before. You re-roll everything, and it became this like great weighted dice game. And it was probably one of the only real ways you could play competitive Seraphon back in the day. But I just think they never really got the changes that they needed to outperform the other options in the book in 2, and I think that that's still the case in 3. So I like them and like huge respect to anyone that runs them. It's a great unit to take to a friendly event because it's fun, it's got utility, but you're not going to break the game with them. I don't think. Like maybe someone will do something really cool. Maybe there's like a synergy with Star Priest to do mortals, but I
Whoa.
I just think you've got so many great options.
Yeah,
They're not going to see it.
and I don't. Thank you to yes, James. Thanks for the points, and thank you to Gurgle My Nurgle Matthew for donating £77 and 77p to the show. That's
What a legend!
insane. That's insane. Thank you for James. That's for James. So round of applause to James. Unbelievable. That's so very very kind of you. Thank you so much. It's mind blowing. So thank you to Gurgle My Nurgle Matthew for doing such a sweet thing as we're talking about this. I'm really hot now. Okay, I mean, I was hot before. I'm looking at my kid in. He's roasting.
I
Okay.
don't know if the audience can see that billowing sail behind you. It looks great.
Yeah, it's very warm. That's all I'm going to tell everyone. What is what is what's the next winner
Let's
or
keep
loser?
going,
Yeah.
right? We've got a lot of units in Seraphon, but let's keep going. So maybe if we talk about the ones that I really want, but just like still can't do, like the Troglodon. I really, really want to use the Troglodon.
Okay.
Like you get tormented playing Seraphon because you read the Slan War Scroll, you read the Kroge War Scroll, and one of them is I can't remember the name of it, but basically you can cast through a skink wizard that's within 12. So that's amazing for Kroge. You've got like a Star Priest in front. You do this little death bubble from there. A great way to like project magical power. But the bit that you read afterwards is or a skink oracle anywhere on the board. And you're like, where is the skink oracle? And you're like, oh, I can only find the one, and it's the Troglodon, and it looks really cool. Like it's a really nice model. It's the alternate build to the Carnosaur. It's this like lean, spitting dinosaur. And some of the ideas are really neat. Like, it spits at stuff and then it goes and scratches them. But the War Scroll isn't great. And I think this was like maybe, I don't know, I don't want to sort of criticize someone as an oversight in points. I think they went, if it's a monster and if it's a hero, put it up X percentage. And it kind of got hit pretty hard. So I think it was a high pointed one that got dropped. So I think it finished at like 220. And then they've upped it 50 points to 270. So it's gone up to like 23%. So like a big change. I'd consider a buff, right? If we say that blanket's 10, it's a nerf. Um, and I want it to be great, right? It gets the monster actions,
Mhm.
but it's bravery 6, so it's not going to heal. You can cast through it, so like, maybe, but it's not really going to do any damage. You're not going to delete stuff with it, and so it's the one that got away. I just, if they pointed it differently, it could be one that changes the game. I think if they decide to do like an edit and the Troglodon drops materially, I think we're going to see it a lot. Maybe in Coalesced, right? Because then you get stronger monsters, you get that durability. You stick like Croak at the back, throw your Troglodon forwards, and just use it to pump out magical power. But where it is now, it's too expensive.
Okay. Okay. I think it was. I've seen it in lists previously. I've saw it as a range extender, and obviously the loss of the Bellwind Vortex. I'm sure you're going to bring that up at some point. But the loss of Bellwind Vortex, you feel like you can kind of sideline into the Troglodon for this power projection, but also it's going to give up a VP in the wrong situation, and you're not going to want that because obviously it's a monster. So you've got to ask
Yep.
yourself: is it going to be bringing in those extra VPs, or does it work as part of a larger piece? And I think the larger piece it
Yeah.
kind of worked as a part of maybe isn't there
Not
anymore.
the VPs.
Yeah,
Well, I think, like you can make it work, but it's at the cost of something else. And that's where the points are like, any war scroll by itself isn't good or bad. It's how it's pointed. And I think this is one of those ones where it's the points that doesn't make it really competitive. Um, but I like the war scroll. I like the model. It's just, I'm not running it yet.
fair. I think that's fair. Okay. All right. What what
All right.
what works next? What you on to
You
next?
mentioned the Balewind. So let's talk about the Balewind.
Please do.
So another one that everyone's really going to miss. So it simply doesn't exist anymore, right?
Hmm.
And I guess what we used to see in 2 was your Croak NATO. So you'd get Croak, you'd take a Balewind, you'd have your Saurus Guard, you'd have your Astrolith, and it would just sit on top of a Balewind. So you get like your bonus to save, you get your Lookout Sir, and it would give you that extra 6-inch range. And so you had, Croak has got Celestial Deliverance, just really nasty spell, and usually gets it off because of all the bonuses to cast. And you'd kind of pop him up, and then he'd get +6 from the Astrolith, +6 from the Balewind, and then suddenly, instead of everything 10 away, it's everything that's 22 away, and you're just picking 3 units, and you go mortals for you, mortals for you, mortals for you, and round the merry-go-round we go, and we'll just do it a bunch of times, and it's quite oppressive. So I think it's nice that it's gone. I think what that also means, because it's coincided with new Kroge, is that we've got something that's way more engaging to play.
Yeah.
So I think, old Kroge was 320 points, and I would have never said it at the time, but probably criminally undercosted. You had this like 7 wounds with a 4-up save, a 3-up, could pass off stuff to the guard, bonuses from the Astrolith, could look out, sir, could garrison, with just huge global magical power. And that's disappeared, and that's come, and now we got new Kroge. So new Kroge is 110 points more. So he's 430 points, and it is a gorgeous model. He looks proportionate to his power now, as opposed to this like sad little mummy. It's some beautiful conversions, but the core unit was just like tragic and fine cast as well. So if you got that one with like bubbles on his palanquin, it was sad. But new Kroge is amazing. I just think it looks fantastic, and from kind of a play standpoint, he's a lot more fun. I think he's more fun for the player, but he's also more fun for the opponent. So they scrapped the 4-up ward, which I think is great.
Mm-hmm.
He can't garrison because he's got more wounds, but he's seen a couple of changes. So War Scroll is +2 to cast. And I think that's one of the things that makes his magical power so strong, because it's 2 on the War Scroll, but then through the asterisms, he can gain +1 as well. And then, okay, not unbinding and dispelling, but on casting, the astrolith can give him +1. So when you're rolling a cast of a 7 and you're getting +4, you're basically not rolling a miscast. The other nice change is he now has access to all of the Slann spells. So he brings a degree of utility, which I think is kind of cool.
Did you think that he didn't have that utility beforehand? Like, did you feel was there
no,
ever
it's different? It's different.
Yeah, was there ever a situation where you were like, I really wish I had the other?
Well, you could change the spell. I think you had to do more planning, right? So he still had the Slann keyword. So you'd basically pick one of the spells, usually your Horde Killer, Stellar Tempest, because you just take it, and it was like it's 24-inch range, and by the way, you can add 12, so you just pick a Horde and smash it. But then if it didn't work, you're like, oh, I really need that heal. At the end of the hero phase, you'd be like, okay, I'll swap it and take Celestial Apotheosis. Whereas I think now, because Kroge's sometimes starting out of range, you're like, well, actually, what kind of things do I want to do? And it's like, maybe I'll do my Comet's Call because I'm always going to cast it. But I have my Mystic Shield over here. Or maybe you really want to do that Hand of Glory, that like reroll ones on your Skinks. So I'm going to try and buff the Star Priest and do Celestial Equilibrium. So I just think having access to everything all the time, it's nice. But the bit that's made him fun is like his wounds mechanic.
Okay.
So back in the old days, it was a bravery test for the people that remember it, and then it moved into like criminally oppressive. But now it's fun, right? So whatever number of wounds he takes in a phase, you kind of tally them up, and then you roll 3 dice. And if it's a 20 plus, he's slain. If miraculously you can do 18 wounds to him in a turn, he's automatically slain. But you've got this kind of like fun gamble. And I think that's enjoyable because it creates tension. And I remember I was playing another Seraphon player, Meg. I think you played Meg as well. And she's just like super lovely. I was playing her Thunder Lizard, and she took that gamble. And like I'd separated Kroge from the guard, and she just dropped a couple chameleons, got 5 wounds off. I'm like, all right. So Kroge can die taking 2 wounds. So with like no way to pass it off, you can get a miscast and you can take him off the board. I want it to happen on stream one day because it's just going to be like show gold. But really, he needs to take 8 or 9 to get that 50-50 chance. And there we go. She's like, okay, done 5 wounds. And I'm like, all right, let's try and create a little bit of drama. And I was thinking I was creating drama for her. So I'm like, I'm going to roll them one at a time. Except that I went 6, 5.
Oh no!
And then I just start sweating. I'm like, oh no! It's like 6 again. All right, let's take him off. But it works the other way too. And I was playing Lumineth the other day, and I did this Hail Mary, chucked him into like just a bunch of stuff, and I rolled really low. And it's kind of like, okay, all the wounds for that phase are gone. Let's try again next time. And I think that's kind of fun. It's like it creates tension. It creates a bit of risk. I'm not sure. I think he brings a lot of tools, so I think we'll still see it in competitive play. But that chance element and the points cost difference might mean we start to see more Slann over Kroge. But I don't know. We'll wait and see.
Okay. All right. Interesting. I think the cost benefit analysis is one that everyone's going to have to make. At the end of the day, Comet's Call has to be the winner, right? Come on. Like,
But you get it on everything, right? You can take a Troglodon, you can take a Slan, you can take Kroge. I mean, you're going to have something that's got it because the utility is just unbelievable.
unbelievable. They're like, you're like, every Seraphon player's like, hey, nice characters you got there. Be a bit of a shame if turn 2 happened.
Oh, you've hidden them? I can't see them? All right, that's cool.
Oh, cool. Are you near terrain? Because guess what? 4 up. Uh-oh. Like, are you hiding them? Because, yeah. So, and what I'm referencing is that there's a global range spell called Comet's Call, and in addition with the Realm Shaper, as James obviously eloquently described earlier, you're able to do, like, a bunch of mortal wounds before, like, they've even moved. Like, and then they're in that threat range. And one of the interesting things about it is it's multiple, because of course one of the really lovely things that you can do is obviously use the heroic action to heal, unless you're like one of the low bravery units that exist in the game. But when you do it to multiple units, Rain of Stars is another good example. The Nurgle spell, Rotigus's War Scroll spell. So like, being able to do multiple chip damage all across the board, actually, it kind of increased in value in my opinion. It's increased in value because now you can kind of be like, I'm going to chip everything. And that while they can heroically heal the one thing, they can't heroically heal everything. And it's going to start to fall down quite quickly, in my opinion. So, yeah.
And I think where we see low bravery MSU, you know, like I think, I keep thinking about it because I just played the other day, but I was playing Lumineth, and Lumineth don't have amazing bravery. And if you're on Kroge, so the nice thing about Comet's Call, right, you cast it into 7. But if you get it on 10 plus, instead of D3 targets, it's D6 targets. So actually, you're getting a lot of choices, and if you can chip away a couple of low bravery units, you can only auto battle shock 1. So not only are you creating that pain, that pressure, those questions on your heroes, but actually you can end up doing like exponentially more damage by going, okay, I've rolled a 4, I'll hit those 4 low bravery units. You roll a couple 4 or 5, like 4, 5, 6s, and it's just going to do like double that or even more.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. What's the next winner loser? Where you at?
Where are we at? So maybe let's look at Kotal's Claw. I feel like I've kind of neglected the Saurus counterparts, and I think they look all right. I think they got hurt on a couple of fronts, and so you know, hats off to anybody that decides to still run them. There isn't a lot that provides rend in kind of the Saurus space. But if we look at points, you know, like, I think like Knights get a lot of attacks. They went 10% up. So if you're running 5, they went from 100 to 110.
Okay.
I think there's some really interesting stuff on like Knights. Saurus Warriors kind of stings a little bit. They went up 17%. They went 90 to 105. But then you've got cohesion, right? They're on 32s. Unit size is 10. So you're running like 10, 20, 30 tops. There's none of those 40 blocks. The loss of the battalion means you're not seeing the rend on the bite. So you can get like a high attack volume, but you're not really going to get to hit everything. So you got to make that trade-off. Do you go for your 1-inch clubs and 1 rend, or do I take more attacks on the spears? And it's kind of that's a tough one. So not amazing. I think a couple of units that came out all right. I think the Scar Vet on Carnosaur, that's really nice. That's a 5-point increase, so 2%, like 210 to 215. I think Scarvet Carnosaur is really nice. Got a really nice command ability as well. That's your 6s to hit explode.
Yep.
So I think that's kind of cool.
Do you feel like units like that got 6s to explode, which is great? Then obviously, is that in the hero phase, or does that happen in the combat phase simultaneously?
Scarvet on Carnosaur, I wrote it down because I don't really run them that often. So that's combat phase. So it's wholly within 18, 6s to hit. But I think it's one of those ones where you're looking for your synergies, right? I like to think of Seraphon as like the thinking man's army. You're like, how do I make this work with this to get an even better outcome?
Yeah, of course.
Which can also be a little bit punishing, because when you forget something, you're like, oh no, that one key thing I didn't do. But you know, you could do like your Scarvet on Carnosaur, which I think is in a nice place for points. Hero monster benefits from it. Bravery 8. You know, you're running it in Coalesced. It's got good durability. There's some nice artifacts. You know, so I think you could take the Kotal's Claw. Is it the Blade of Realities, or you could take the new one from the book, which I think is rend and 1 extra damage. So I think that it's like that's in a nice space. But what you could also do is you could take a Sunblood, and I love the Sunblood. Like, one day I'm going to run a meme list, and I'm going to stick the dagger on the Sunblood.
Okay.
Because it's gone down in points, right? It was 130, it's now 125. It's got, I don't know, a gazillion attacks that explode and then a gazillion attacks that do mortal wounds, like give or take. But it's got a cool ability in that it's a command ability used in the combat phase, but you use it on an opponent's unit and you get +1 to wound. And I think in a world where we've got lots of bonuses to hit, and maybe you can do some like, so in Kotal's Claw, I guess the bit I didn't mention is if a Saurus unit charges, they get +1 to hit. So you're not needing to spend that command ability there in the hero phase for all-out attack.
Yes.
So what that means is maybe you give the Scarvet Carnosaur in the combat phase the exploding sixes. So you got, okay, I got my +1 to hit, sixes are going to explode. And then if you've got your Sunblood in the right space, you can also go +1 to wound, or maybe you've been like saving up that Triumph. And then suddenly you're going, okay, well, I'm actually getting quite a lot more through in my damage. So maybe you've gone for a block of your Saurus or I don't know, like Saurus Warriors, or you've got your Saurus Knights, and you can start synergizing those buffs. And then you chuck in a Star Priest. Maybe you've managed to get Curse off on a Priest as well, and you start to find ways to make it work. But I think in Kotals, you just got to try that much harder. But if you want to play the hard proper dinosaurs, and that's where you're going, it has tools.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, it's one of the Finecast models, and I think ultimately, like, the headline of the whole show is that Seraphon's still in a great place. But
Yeah.
are there other options? It's one of the widest books in Age of Sigmar, and what I mean by that is there are so many good units. You can run away. You could try to run away from the over top good units and still end up in an okay place. Thanks to Rule of Cool Gaming for resubscribing. Big love to you. Thanks everyone for tuning in live, by the way. Super lovely of you. All right, what's next? Hit me.
All right, maybe should we chat a couple of lists?
Okay, is that what we're up to? Winners and losers over.
We can do. I don't mind.
Well, I just want to ask you a couple of questions. Like Skink Priest, you touched on a bit. But
oh yeah, all right. Skink Priest is the MVP. Like with the Realm Shaper, like I'd need a really good reason for someone not to take a Skink Priest. So like it's just an incredible unit. So you can, what do you got? You got your Holy Within 12 command ability, so +1 to hit for something with a Skink keyword, which is like everything except your Saurus. And I think that gives you a lot of options. It means you can probably get multiple pluses to hit in shooting or combat or both. It's only 80 points. You've got a really cool ability that I expected to get turned into a prayer but hasn't happened yet. And that's, again, skink keyword. But if you can roll a 3 up, which you usually do, that skink unit can run, shoot, charge, and get +1 save. So if you think about your standard Fangs list, your Skink Blob, so they've got a nice move. They're already 8. In the first turn, they're getting +3. And you've got so many CPs, because I guess that's the other thing that Kroge and the Slans are doing, is you're getting more command points to play with. You guarantee it, and suddenly you're like, shoot, that unit has moved 17, and it can shoot 16 too, because I took an 80-point character.
Yeah.
Like, gross.
Gross.
And then you've got access to the prayers. So I think the prayers are really interesting. I like Smite. I like this idea of this like little holy war across the map, 48-inch range on a 2-up. Like, that's cool. That's fun. So, we've got priests.
Yeah, so but the Skink Priest and the Skink Starseer, like, they have like all of the joy that the other priests don't have, right? Like Daughters of Cain priests are like, what the hell,
They didn't have prayers. They just had the word.
Yeah, they just had and they had a minion ability, which is is the minion ability a 3-up? Is that the one that's
the run, shoot, charge?
That's not a prayer? That's a minion ability.
It's an ability.
Yeah, an ability. So
you could do it on 2 different units. So you could have like 2 priests, and you're like, those Pterodons that are 19, oh yeah, they run 2. Those Skinks, yeah, they're in your face as well. So like, you just got to roll it 3 up.
And but it's not a prayer, which obviously means like
it's not a prayer.
Like, are Seraphon better because you've also got access to Curse?
Yeah, so I really like Curse, and I think that Curse is like that special place where, you've lost your Star Priest because everybody knows that you have to kill it.
Yeah, of course.
And you've got charged. And, maybe you run away, maybe you didn't, but suddenly you're within 9 in the hero phase. And tragically, I haven't been able to roll my 4-ups. But if you can roll that 4-up, the mortal wounds on 6s to hit in addition, terrifying. So I'm running 2 with Curse. But actually, it's got space in Thunder Lizard, right? You can give him heal. Or even if like if you haven't had to heal yet, maybe what you could do bless. You could go for that like 6-up shrug, just the ability to get like the generic like the prayers that everyone's
Yeah.
got, and then one of the other ones, amazing. And you stick it in a realm shaper. So like take two, have one like go and march up, have a guy sit in the back and go mortals for you.
Okay. Amazing. Yeah. Like it's phenomenal. Yeah. Yeah. Really good. I was just gonna say I think that's got to be one of the big takeaways. Really, is that the Seraphon scary block is like you say 25% less output, but ultimately big output stonks in that curse of
Yeah.
availability for the army.
I think it's nice. I think the skinks, we've got a new question because I think when you move, like you kind of, as we shifted from 2 to 3, the first thing you do is like, how do I play the stuff I used to
Yeah.
play? And skinks are interesting because I used to always run them. They got different loadouts, right? So you can have a javelin, which has got like slightly better range stats, but it's less than a 9-inch range, so you're not going to get your teleport and shoot. They've got the blot spitter, which is like what everybody runs because it's 16-inch range. You're going to be able to roll lots of dice to hit. And then you got a choice. So you could run a shield, or you could drop the shield and take a club. And you used to always take the shield because their War Scroll save is a 6,
Yeah.
and the shield made it a 5. And you used to be able to stack save in 2 in quite an unpleasant way because your priest ability would take that 5 to a 4,
Yeah.
and then you might use like the Slan or Kroge's command ability, and it would be +1 against shooting. And you're like, why is this like 60 points per 10 unit? Got a 3-up save. It's got 10 bravery, or I've cast a spell, so it just doesn't take battle shock, and it's doing a gazillion mortals. So, but because the save stacking has disappeared, it's posed a question that I didn't expect, which is the loadout. And it's like, do I keep the shield? Because
Interesting.
if you take the shield, the melee weapon's a dagger, and you're 5s and 5s, and kind of that's the same as your blot spitter, and that's what I've gotten used to. But if you swap the shield for a club, it's 4s and 4s. So suddenly in melee, you're getting a 50% damage uplift. Now it's not truly 50 because you've probably already buffed them to hit, but that's still a 33% buff on your hit, and then either a 50 or 33% buff on wound. So I think actually what you might start seeing is some skink glass cannons. So instead of like really leaning into that parting shot, which they've kept, which I think is really strong because you got 2 ways to shoot in the opponent's turn now.
However, and I know this came up in a game you played recently, because I'd like to talk about this because they FAQ'd it, right, and you played in a tournament not long after. So like you can't parting shot a unit like and then also unleash hell the same unit, but you can after you.
Oh yeah, yeah. So I think this is one of the things that makes Fang so strong, and that's their command ability, right? So parting shot is a command ability, and when a unit finishes a charge, if they're within 3 of that unit of skinks, the skinks get to shoot. And because you've buffed them up, they get to keep all those buffs. And I think what makes it horrific in 3 is that this is the charge phase. So your opponent can't all out defense because you can only do that in the shooting or the combat
Mhm.
phase. And there's other things like, you think those Lumineth cows, well, actually, again, that minus to hit, that shooting or combat phase. So they've retained that ability to shoot unmodified, fully buffed at the end of a charge within 3. On a 4-up, they have to retreat, so they move 8 inches, which is incredible. You can move on to an objective, you can go and protect something, you can deny combat. um, but I guess the bit that makes it really nasty is if you, which is what I did against, I think it was poor Tom, is you can shoot with all your skinks, and then if you haven't quite finished it, what you've probably done is you've teleported 2 salamanders behind that unit of skinks. And because you got your priest and your star priest, you're like, well, I got another hero. I've got an excess of command points. Why don't we also unleash hell? And I think shooting twice at something that's key that's charged you is really nasty.
Yeah, I mean, because that's kind of a key takeaway here. Is like for everyone at home and just for people generally, is like people are, I guess, already fairly annoyed or miffed at Unleash Hell in the right situations. And Seraphon are like, lol, how about I do it 2 times? Yeah, you're like, what are you shooting me
Yeah.
with? And it's not like 20 pink horrors where I got to roll a lot of dice and I hope you roll ones. It's like 2 salamanders where like you're like, oh okay,
Yeah, yeah. And pick the order that you do it, right? So you could go like, okay, maybe I want to save Unleash Hell. So if they throw trash at you, Maybe you're like, well, actually, I'm going to save my skink blob. And the nice thing about parting shot is if you're already in combat and something charged, they can still do that. So that kind of differentiates it. So it's only 3, whereas parting shot is, I think you can find ways to counter it. I had a really nice game that was against Velatron, and he was smart, right? So I had my skink blob, and I think maybe I'd already used parting shot, or I can't remember. He did it, or maybe it was a Salamanders, and he just chucked some Aether Wings in. And because there was suddenly an enemy within 3, I had to choose. I was like, do I use parting shot and just like kill the Aether Wings, or do I not do it at all? So I think there's ways that you counter it. And I think that's a really nice detail which will differentiate top players in 3. And that's the order that you do things. So making a move to try and like beta redeploy, or charging in something that you don't mind losing to prevent or use up that Unleash Hell, that's interesting.
That is very interesting. Love this. Love talking to you, James. Thanks very much. So I know for a fact that you could go on for hours. Okay, so what lists have you, in a great way, by the way, I'd like to be clear. So what lists have you been looking at? What do you like the look of?
So I was just like playing around to see what's possible. And I guess the starting point, I was like, what absolute dirt can I write? I was like, what am I going to try and like win something with? And I've been running something that feels really competitive. So I've been taking like my Kroge, Guard, Astrolith. I think that like that does a lot, really, just like great ability to shut down magic. It's got good utility. You get some summoning out of it. I'm running 1 skink blob, 2 salamanders, 1 salamander, 2 lots of chameleons, because like they are MVP, and a unit of Pteridons. So I've kind of really leaned into just like lots of mortal wounds, just because I think that the ability to negate like regular armor saves through like all-out defense and other tools, mortal wounds are really shining, and so it's got a lot of those, and it's got a lot that can basically be anywhere. So you can delete the things that you need to be, which really helps you score those battle tactics. So that's kind of where I've been. But I thought, can I max min it a little bit further? And so I thought, well, what happens if we take out the Astrolith and we take out Kroge? And then suddenly you start seeing some really interesting things. So I thought, like, let's take the Star Master. I think you still want to keep Comet's Call. It's got +1 cast. You could use the Asterism +2. You're still getting that chip damage. And it's getting you those summoning points, the Celestial Conjuration, right? You can sacrifice 1 spell. It doesn't hurt you too much, and you can still take something like your Horde Killer, your Heal, or whatever it is that you need, but it's saving you a bunch of points. If you're dropping the Astrolith as well, because you're not looking at that same projection, you lose a bit, but you gain a lot of points. So I thought Slan, Star Priest, 2 priests in the other list, 1 to sit in the Realm Shaper and 1 to follow the Skink Blob, because we always want those mortals. So heroes, I think, take the Slan, take a Star Priest, Hand of Glory, because there's not much that allows rerolls, but that's a spell that lets you reroll ones to hit. 2 priests, I think, curse on both, right? Because like 1 set at the back, but if it all goes wrong, you can replace the other one if it gets killed. Yep. Probably use some of the new battalions to get that extra enhancement.
Yep.
So because your Star Priests are a really key unit, there's a nice artifact in the book, Incandescent Retrices. And what this means is when that hero dies, if you can roll a 4-up, any of the unallocated wounds get negated, and it comes back with full health. Like, that's amazing. And the way in which you can easily access additional artifacts now means, you can stick that on a Stegodon Chief, you can stick that on an engine, you can have like some really sad moments if you can roll that 4-up.
Yeah.
But
yeah, some really great sad moments for them, great moments for you.
Yeah, it depends.
Yeah.
It depends if you can roll it.
That's true.
So I think let's go Slan, Star Priest, 2 priests, block of Skinks. We're going to take 10 as kind of tax, but I think that just like 10 Skinks still offers a lot of utility. You get good movement, they can cap a point, use them as a screen if you need to. You've got your 5 guard, because without the guard, Kroge and your Slan just aren't going to survive. I think that access to basically 10 more wounds to a key unit is amazing. And I guess if anyone's listening and doesn't know, if they're within 3 of a Slan or Kroge, on a 2-up, they take the wound instead. And running 5, that's 10 wounds. if you wanted to kind of like synergize it further, maybe give them Bless or put the Astrolith, so then they can also get that 6 up, and you end up with some pretty durable things. And then I think 3 Pterodons. We've talked about it. They bring great utility. I think 3 times 5 Chameleons. They they're just so sticky. And running them in fives means it's another choice, right? Like even if they're next to each other, your unit's gonna like your enemy's gonna have to pick how they split their attacks. They're getting their save, and then you're getting 4 ups. Incredible value for points. They appear anywhere. They do those chip mortals. I take a bunch of them. And then let's just like lean in further on the mortals. 2 lots of 2 salamanders. That's like 8 dice. Can you roll some 6s? If you can't, maybe you can roll 3s, do 3s again, 2 rends, d3 damage. It's a ton. You get to play your mini game. And then, because we haven't really talked about them too much, an Emerald Life Swarm.
Okay.
I think you've got choice with the Life Swarm, right? So it's popping off twice, and I know you've talked about it before, but like that's d3 twice. That's really nice. And you go, well, do I want more salamanders, or do I need to follow my skinks, or do I need it to heal my key heroes? But I think for 60 points in an army that's got a lot of magical power, or like usually gets their casts off, it's a really strong choice.
Yeah. And
so that's my kind of max min fangs if I don't run Kroge.
okay, love that. I think I can and Katif in the chat has said, "I'd love to see that you're also thinking of dropping the the Astroloth Banner Bearer, the Saurus Astroloth Banner Bearer." Don't know why that was a problem, because he's playing with that idea as well. And I would agree. I do think that there is the dropping Kroge and dropping the Saurus. To be honest, I completely agree with the comics call. By the way, I'm a huge Seraphon stan. The audience might not know. I'm chipping in way more than I do in some of the other shows. It's because I've been playing these guys for such a long time. I've got a huge collection. I'm massive into it. But I agree, the comics call is integral to keep that in, right? And then double that up with the camos. I think that's the one nice thing.
And the Realm Shaper.
Yeah,
and the Pterodons. You're trying to create certainty.
Yeah.
And all of these tools together. It's and that's why the Priest 3-up, you can afford to miss it because you still have a teleport. And that's what's nice about this army. You can create these safety nets that don't guarantee it because it's still a dice game, but give you much better odds.
Yeah, 100%. So was I right in thinking, I heard that there's also, I think lists like that, or we're still going to see Salamanders and Skinks. And I mean, you didn't even throw Gotrek in there, but that's the thing. I don't think you need to. I think you don't need to, right? You can do so many good things already with the Seraphon book. You're just adding win to win.
Yeah. You raise a really good point though about Gotrek because that's allies, and there was a big change actually. So I don't like. There's a place for allies in Seraphon, and in 2 we saw some really interesting things. I think a couple of people won events by dropping in a prime, but the things that you could access in 2 were Stormcast Eternals and Sylvaneth, and I don't think I saw anyone do Sylvaneth to great success, but I like the idea. They've got some beautiful models. I like the Kurnoth Hunters. But what was interesting in 3 was they dropped Sylvaneth, and I guess it was part of the story, and they added in Cities of Sigmar. And that's probably like a whole show in itself.
Mm.
But that Seraphon now have access to any of the tools there. Put in a battle mage, give it wild form. You got +2 run and charge on something. There was some crazy potential in there. So the book has a ton, but maybe one of the hot stonks for 3 for Seraphon is access to cities.
Okay, that's fair. That's an interesting one. I mean, I don't know what they can bring that the book doesn't already have, but maybe there's something.
There's a lot of tools, but Darren Watson or someone is going to find something and you're going to be like, sorry, the wording of that rule is what? And you're like, okay, let's lean into it.
Let's do that. Okay, I heard there was going to be a fun list somewhere along the way.
Oh, yeah, I thought I'll go gamey. I like a challenging game. I like to be competitive. I like it when someone's like, oh, if we can do this one thing. But actually, there's also a space of just rolling dice with your mates. And so I thought I'd just try a couple of different things. And so there's definitely competitive Thunder Lizard, but I thought what might be just a bit more fun, and maybe it's not that fun, but I just chucked in 2,000 points, and I was like, Slan, starting point. Let's keep Comet's Call.
Yeah.
You there's space to drop it, but I like Aslan. You know, it's got a hero, it's got a bit of magic. It means you get to like play more of the game.
Yeah.
3 priests because they're amazing. 80 points. You got like one chilling in the realm shaper pointing at stuff, and then that means that 2 can follow the big dinosaurs that you pick.
Okay.
And so I think 3 stegodons. Like 3, it's not too heavy, but stegodons are great. I just love their profile. They're the drinking man's dinosaur because it's like threes -1 and whatever damage it is that I'm supposed to remember, right? So it's like I'm gonna shoot, and it's not too difficult because you're like, oh, how many shots do I get? Like oh yeah, it's like 3. I get 3 shots, threes, -1. What's the damage? Oh yeah, 3 as well, right? Like cool, I'll just do that 3 times.
Mm.
So it felt like the right number, and they're really nice in melee. I think that just like the regular Stegodon, which you can have as battle line in Thunder Lizard, like they're cool. You know, you get a couple of impact hits. So through the monstrous things at the end of the charge, you're basically getting like 2 sets of hits because you get the one at the end of the charge, and then you get the one like when they finish their charge, and then the one at the end of the charge phase. So that's cool. They've got that like armored crest. So in a space where I think a lot of the meta will be MSU units, if there's 5 or fewer models, the Stegodon in combat can be like, all right, +1 to save against you, which means you got options in how you allocate all-out defense, or you can maybe even negate that kind of -2 if you need to. So I just think like 3 Stegodons, that's good fun. You get to push the big dinosaurs forwards, and the dice are easy to remember. But that still leaves a lot of points. So you got like your little skinks marching up with your 3 Stegodons, and then 2 Bastillodons. 2 Bastillodons with the solar engine because the other one doesn't exist. Like just from here on, can we just not talk about it? And that's great. That's shooting, right? And I think one of the guys in the chat you mentioned already talked about the utility. So you basically get to shoot 3 times. You know, your Slan's potentially giving you about like a few more command points. The nature of AOS 3 means you get more command points. So that's like 9, 18, 27 shots before they start taking damage. So you think you've got 5 big dinosaurs, some priests, but then I think the safety net so that you get a more competitive play is the other unit that I've just like gone on about forever. 2 times 5 chameleons.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what it doesn't have, right? There, you don't have that mobility. You don't have great capping power. So you go like Slan, a few priests, 5 big dinosaurs, and it's fun at deployment, right? I think it's one of those ones where it's like, oh, how many drops are you? Okay, I'm this many drops. And it's like, okay, over to you, sir. And you go, okay, I'll just put these over here next to my drink. And it's like, okay, over to you again, sir. And you're like, oh, I'm going to do it again. Isn't this fun, right? And it's kind of, it just means you get to see more of how they're deploying. I don't know. So yeah, so I think that's fun. Like it's 5 big dinosaurs, but it's got enough utility that it's not just rolling dice and moving forwards. You can do a couple of tactical plays, but it's not overly taxing.
Okay, super fun. Love that, because because honestly, I think Seraphon have still got tons of play in this edition, tons and tons and tons. They got that DPS.
Oh yeah,
they got that DPS check for the 4 gargants, which is definitely a thing. Like, and I think I agree with you. Like rally or even life swarm on salamanders is like grim fandango.
Or both.
Yeah, yeah. Or why not both? Why not take Jam and all of your dreams and smash them together and have the best time? Amazing. Yeah. James, it's been a pleasure talking to you about the Seraphon. Thank you so much. The list that James has talked about, I'll put up on the Honest Wargame website. He's going to send them to me, and they'll be on there, and they'll be included in the show notes for you guys as well, as will a link to James's socials if you want to talk to him more about Seraphon, which I'm sure he would always be keen to do forever, as long as he can. So thanks again. Have you got any shout-outs before we head out today?
I think I'll just shout out to some lovely people. So I think James Powell and to Meg and yourself as well. So I think some lovely friends that I get to roll dice with really often. We spend a lot of time. You know, James is a regular on the show, and Meg's absolutely lovely. So they're brilliant. And also to you, because I think what you do for the community, just like bring everyone together, getting everyone to like watch this, it just elevates everything. And you're a lovely person. So thank you.
That's thanks for. I'll give you the money Nurgle Matthew gave us. Like, okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, lovely having you on. You're a wonderful person. If you don't know James Hobbs, you should get to know him. I'm sure he'll be at events sometime in the future, and you'll just find that you've had the loveliest time talking with him. Thanks everyone for joining us live, by the way, or listening to the podcast, or watching us on YouTube. Obviously, subscribe, hit that like button, do all that other stuff. Leave some comments as well, and then. If you're watching live right now, we're going to be live with the 40k Spy Center in like literally 10 minutes. So do join us again in 10 minutes. We'll be back. Once again, James, thanks very much for being on the show. Thanks everyone for listening to On This Wargamer, and we'll see you guys soon.